And we're back again tonight. Me and my old man with Basil. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, mate.
Good. Back for round two. So good.
Yeah, ready for round
to do
two,
it
mate.
again.
Yeah, ready for round two. Dad, do you want to take it away? We talk about. I want to start off with Trump and the recent anti-he's upped with the BBC, because now he's going to change. He's upped it to $5 billion that he's going to be charging the BBC now in a lawsuit, in regards to them doctoring his speech, which I think's amazing, if I'm honest.
Before we start that, can I just do a little shout out? I saw Moxie Don in the comments. I haven't seen Moxie Don around in ages.
I've just seen that as well.
Moxie Don is an absolute legend, and he disappeared from X. So I'm pleased to see you alive and well, mate, on YouTube. Wish you all the best, Moxie. You're a great guy.
Oh, he's amazing. And the intro that just happened, Moxie made that for me.
Oh, right, did he? I'm not surprised. He's a talented guy. Yeah, there's quite a few people on X who've benefited from him.
Anyone needs graphics, go to Moxie Don. He's amazing.
No, he's a fantastic dude.
Yeah, no, honestly, thanks for that, Moxie. But yeah, so I wanted to start off and talk about the recent shenanigans going on between the United States and the BBC, primarily due to the BBC doctoring President Trump's speech. And now he's going to, it was initially a $1 billion that he was going to take him on with a lawsuit, but now he's up the ante now, isn't he? He's upped it to $5 billion, which I think is amazing. I'm interested to know, like, is he going to up it even more? And like, I don't know, he's going to wake up tomorrow and up it to 10.
Well, I don't think a president's ever sued anyone while in office before, at least not in the last 100 years. So since the advent of global media. So the question is how much damage to someone's reputation does that do? So yeah, I mean, sky's the limit, really, isn't it? Well, if you're going to lie about the president, the interesting thing on it is, right, at first I thought it was a bit of a Trump being Trump thing. Do you know what I mean? To be kind about it. I just thought he was doing it. It was, we all know man's got an ego. Nothing wrong in saying that, but he has. And I just thought he was kind of like doing things like not the way presidents would. Okay. So he doesn't play by the rules as much, the conventional wisdom as much. And I thought this is interesting. And plus I hate the BBC, so I'm glad to see them get a kicking. But at the same time, I wasn't sure if there was a nobler goal to this, other than just he gets a payday and they get a kick in the teeth. But then I saw his interview with Bev Turner yesterday, and what he said, so true. He basically said, he went, I'm sick of them doing this to people. I'm sick of not just the BBC, but other media outlets doing this to people. And in particular, I'm sick of them doing it to presidents. So he is setting the precedent of going after media outlets that lie about what the President of the United States is saying. And hopefully the BBC will get such a kick in that it will see the beginning of the end, I think, for the BBC, hopefully. But also what it will mean is that other news outlets as well think twice before doctoring political videos in future. And that would bode well, not just for presidents of the United States, but for other politicians around the world, including in our own country. Yeah,
I mean, he touched base on the energy as well. He said we've got one of the highest costing energy prices. We're one of the countries with the highest cost for energy, and he said it doesn't have to be like that because we've got our own oil reserves up in the North Sea. That obviously Ed Miliband is stopping us from drilling. Because he's into this net zero, scam and all this stuff with the wind turbines and stuff. But like, I don't understand why they, you know what I mean? Why he thinks that it's beneficial for the UK to constantly import oil when we've actually got enough of our own oil fields up in the North Sea to be self-sustaining and to be self-sufficient on our own reserves. So,
well, yeah, I mean, on the energy thing, we've got the fourth highest energy prices in the developed world, behind Ireland, Germany, and Italy, I think it is, and they're all going through the same kind of stupid net zero thing that we're going through. We've got the highest industrial energy prices in the world because in those countries, industrial energy is subsidized. So we pay the highest, which means that business is just expensive, right? Because energy costs everything. It's everything, right? It's everything you use takes energy, right? No one has a business where it doesn't take electricity. So the question is why? And does it need to be this way? And that's the sad thing, right? Like many of the problems we have in this country, they are of our own making. They are of British people or people who are here anyway, causing these problems for people because of ideology or because of poor standards or whatever. In this case, it's mainly ideology. I mean, we both the Tories and the Labour Party have bought hook, line and sinker the nonsense that is net zero. They've just completely bought into this absolutely ridiculous, farcical idea. It makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, look, I'm a qualified electrical engineer, right? I've looked into this. I understand that I've looked into how the grid operates and what we could do for energy and all the rest of it, right? And there's people who are far more qualified than me who've looked at this and said the exact same thing, that there is absolutely no need whatsoever for us to do this net zero stuff. It makes no sense. And it's not just a case of, look, if wind farms worked, I'd be for them. In fact, I don't actually have anything against wind turbines in the sea. There is a small case that you could make for those ones because they're bigger, they are more productive, and so on. But to be honest with you, our energy we should have transitioned from coal to nuclear, and we should have done that a long time ago. Coal, to be honest with you, I don't actually have a problem with burning coal. I know people say it's the worst thing in the world. I genuinely don't have a problem with burning coal. When it comes to CO2 emissions in this country, we are a fraction of what is going on around the rest of the world. I mean, one of the biggest, just again, this is our media who don't ask questions about this stuff. No one's asked Ed Miliband what happened to the the coal-fired steel plant in Port Talbot. No one's asked him what happened to it. And he got shut down, and then he got tracked. So we swapped it for an electric arc reactor, which costs more in terms of energy, but doesn't burn coal. And then but Tata Steel took that and shipped it round the world to India and then just opened it up there. So nothing changed in terms of CO2 output. China they literally build coal plants every other month. They're building them. And it's like, what is the point? We can't keep up with this. So it's just nonsense. And like I say, it goes to show how out of touch with reality, how wealthy our elitist classes are, and how little they care about working class people. Because I mean, look, for example, right? I could go on about this for hours, so let's not. But they've got, like, for instance, there's a tariff on all electricity bills of 25%. A tariff of 25%. That is the net zero tariff. It's used to subsidize quote unquote green technologies. So it's just a tax. You could take that off tomorrow. Someone said your electricity bill could reduce by 25% tomorrow. And you go, wow, how is that possible? Literally, a government ticks a box and says, we're getting rid of this tariff. I mean, I don't think people are squeezed enough. In this country, we could have really good high standards of living with lots of people having money and being comfortable and all the rest of it. But it's choices that government makes that means that people are impoverished all the time. And what they do is they basically put it not on the poorest in society, because obviously they get subsidized for most of their stuff. They put it on the people who work. So the people who actually get up and do something every single day to keep this economy rolling, those are the ones who pay. And it's a travesty. It's a real travesty. And Trump's absolutely right about it.
Dad?
Well, yeah. Good evening, Basil. First off, hello.
Evening, Rick. I didn't think we'd be doing this again, but thanks for the invite.
But no, just picking up on what you've said. Where I live in Blythe, just off the coast, we have some of the largest offshore wind farms in England. Obviously, we've got the Catapult Energy Capture Centre based in Blythe as well. with the huge reels and all the infrastructure that goes with it. And yet, if they were all running all at the same time and none of them were turned off, it would produce somewhere between 3 and 5% of Northumberland's power. That's it. That's it. And these things are huge. They're a blot on the landscape. The damage they do to the sea life, especially birds that are coming in and leaving for nesting purposes on the coast, absolutely traumatic. You wouldn't believe the amount of sea life that get blown into these blades and then just get shredded constantly.
Terrible. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is.
Our energy could have been solved so simply by switching to nuclear. I mean, this whole stuff about, Chernobyl and Fukushima and stuff like that, it's all a load of rubbish, right? The safety protocol, for a start, no one actually died as a result of Fukushima. Chernobyl, if anyone's seen the HBO show, it's pretty accurate. It explains basically it was Soviet Union error and trying to save on costs and stuff that cost people their lives.
Yeah.
Nuclear power is incredibly safe. The government's just eyed up one small modular reactor, which they've said is going to happen in Wales now. We need to scrap all net zero stuff and go straight into these small modular reactors. I believe that the base load of this country should be completely public owned. It should be owned by this country and the government. It should be based around nuclear reactors, and then for the excess, I can't remember the word for it, but the stuff that comes on top of the base load that you need for peak load for that. Sorry, I think for that, I don't mind a bit of private investment. I think that there is some good stuff from Siemens I've seen, particularly around the offshore wind farms and stuff like that. I've got no issue with those. Onshore wind farms should not exist. On these farms, solar panel farms shouldn't exist, okay? No. So, solar panels are designed to work really well in the desert, right? We don't have one in the UK, so let that be for the warm countries, right? We're not that. Wind, like I say, offshore, I'm okay with it. It's shown some promise. Onshore, complete waste of time, so damaging to the environment, as you just said. I saw someone posting about tidal power. I'm not sold on tidal power, but there is talk of a mega project to basically go across the North Sea with tidal runs that would be joint between Norway and the UK. Things like that, I am not against looking into. So that would be good as well. But really, the key thing we should turn around and say is, listen, we are going to invest in at least 10, I don't know how many it is, I haven't done the maths, but however many small modular nuclear reactors across this country, that will be an investment over the next 25 years that will pay dividends. Your children will pay next to nothing for their energy costs. Everyone can get on board of that.
Yeah. And personally, I would have been a lot happier if these subsidies had been put in place to actually make sure the small modular reactors or the things that were getting produced, rather than the excess of wind farms and failed solar farms as well. So I absolutely agree with you on that one. And just to touch base on the cost for that, the British public are absolutely crippled with tax as it is. It hits you from every direction, and to be in a position now where we're having to subsidize something that pretty much anyone with a couple of iota of common sense knows is impractical and unworkable, and to be quite honest, a scam that they're having to pay for, is just unpalatable to the British public. They want an end to it. Most people that I've spoken to on the doorsteps want an end to it. And there's a lot of gaining momentum in Westminster for a curb on these ridiculous efforts of wind and solar. It's just not viable in this country. And even when they are viable, as I was saying, they raise such a tiny amount of power onto the national grid, it's hardly worth mentioning. Small modular nuclear reactors are the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
End of story. That's all we need to do.
And if anyone wants to debate anyone on this, on the kind of green left idiot sort of side of things, just go and look up a guy called Patrick Moore. Patrick Moore is very intelligent British businessman. He has just criticised the. I'm sorry, not British. He's Canadian actually. He criticised the Green movement. He is routinely goes around exposing how they just lie and make up statistics and facts. And this is action industry now, where people are making billions, if not trillions, out of just nonsense, made up science, bogus facts. The reason why Patrick Moore is such a good person to cite is because he is the man who invented Greenpeace. He has since changed his mind. So if you need to look up someone, about that, he's the guy to go to. He's got some amazing things he can teach people about since the 80s, how the climate catastrophe is just a load of old nonsense.
Yeah. Some guys put up on the comments that Advance UK are going to scrap net zero. And he's also put up something about him seeing a documentary about a trial tidal system that provides round-the-clock energy and needs minimal maintenance. But the problem is nobody wants to scale it because they are risk averse. Well, Advance UK aren't the only party that want to scrap net zero. I think Reform have been pretty clear about wanting to scrap net stupid zero, as Richard Tice likes to put it. As for the scaling up the tidal thing, I suppose they could anchor them to the redundant oil platforms in the North Sea if they're not going to use those for taking any more oil out. But failing that, I can't see a tidal system being given that kind of green light or the scale based upon the non-success of the solar farms and the wind farms as well.
Scrapping net zero, it will be a massive instant win as well, by the way, because like I say, 25% off your electricity bills is a lot, and it's every single person who pays full price electricity will get that in this country, not just businesses, individuals as well, your household. So if you scrap it overnight, you get that back, and that will be fantastic, I think, for everyone. So
absolutely, real money back in the people's pockets. We're fleeced beyond compare. We're one of the highest taxed
in the world. We are
on the planet, and who doesn't want to pay less tax? I would like to see a radical change to the tax system. I'd like it simplified beyond belief. I don't like the two-tier tax system either. This is me speaking personally, especially when Labour talk about the threshold for 40% tax. But the way they pushed people, originally that was for people that were on a very good wage. Now there are so many poor working people that are having to look at possibly paying 40% tax just because they've fallen into that bracket because of the way they pushed wages up to cover other issues.
Yeah,
it's a vicious circle.
Yeah, I'm not against the progressive tax system. I just think that I've heard like Nigel in the past say things like a flat tax, which frankly is just stupid, but it's not something I really get into with reform because, like I said, in the economy, it's like an afterthought right now. But I don't think that's what reform's policy is going to be at the election. I imagine it will be to maintain some sort of progressive tax system. But the rates, I think there needs to be more thresholds. I also think they need to raise the thresholds. The fact that they haven't been raised in, I think it's like something like 20 odd years. Yeah. And you've got to remember, inflation has been through the roof recently. So we are getting taxed more by stealth, and that's not right either. So, yeah, there needs to be more thresholds. They need to be somehow tethered to inflation. And, it needs a massive reform, because what I don't understand is that the government's attitude seems to be, well, if we just keep taxing everyone, it will make the country somehow better. But you've got to remember, our debt still gets bigger every single year. So we're not fixing the problem. We're simply postponing the problem. So the question is, well, what brings in more tax? Is it giving people more money to spend? I've never understood it. When you go and speak to poor people, and I don't mean people who're having a bad day, a bad time right now. I mean really poor people. They don't have any savings, right? We know the vast majority of people in this country don't save anything. They spend everything. Well, you get VAT on pretty much everything you spend. So the question is why are you not giving them more of their own money? Let them grow the economy and get the money through that way instead of taking it out in income tax. That's the way I look at it anyway. I think it makes sense to me. Give people more of their own money back.
Exactly. You know, you've worked hard for it, you've earned it. Allow the people to keep it. They will spend more. If they've got more in their pocket, it's a natural thing for people to spend more. They feel better about themselves. They don't feel under strain all the time, and they indulge in one or two luxuries, which are fantastic. It moves the economy forward. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
You've even got a couple of people here in the comments. Devil's advocate. He said, "Stop government spending." Helen Crystals. Advance want to raise the threshold and do away with the inheritance tax.
That's something I disagree with Advance on, but they haven't actually announced what the tax policy is there on inheritance. I believe there should be an inheritance tax. It's something that I disagree with Rupert Law and everything else. Reason being,
think there should be an inheritance
tax?
tax?
Absolutely. Yeah, over a certain amount. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, vast majority of people.
I don't understand. Can you explain why though? Because the only thing I wanted to say about inheritance tax, the way I've always looked at it, is like we get taxed on literally everything
multiple times. Yeah,
you literally there's. I mean, it's like a running alphabet of tax this, tax that, right?
Yep.
But with inheritance tax, I've never understood that because it's like, what's the point in working hard all your life to pay off a mortgage or a house to then leave to your children, right? Mortgage free, right? But then really, when the mortgage is paid off and then you then leave the house in your will to your children, they then get hit with this inheritance tax. So then that then makes them that in turn that then forces them to having to remortgage the house to pay the inheritance tax to then basically pay off part of the mortgage again, which you've already worked hard all your life to pay off to give to your kids.
Absolutely. Let me explain why I'm in favour of inheritance tax. Remember, most people do not get inheritance tax, and just like every other tax, there are thresholds. I'm not talking about people who've got small houses or whatever, or personal savings getting sent on to their kids, right? You don't want to see people get taxed on that. That's fine. What I'm talking about, and like someone just mentioned there about farms, absolutely. Inheritance tax on farmers' estates is so stupid because they are used for a function that society benefits from, i.e. food. And, again, they don't earn much money day to day, but the land is worth a fortune. So you're absolutely right. In those cases, yes, the government need to turn and say this is a stupid thing to put inheritance tax on. But the reason why I always think there should be some form of inheritance tax is you've just said it, Shawnee. You work hard all your life, right? Yeah. And you pay off a house and then you give it to your child who doesn't have to work hard at all for anything because they've just been handed it all, right? So you can imagine, and this is what's happened in towns and cities around the country, right? There are cities, perfect example, York, I used to live there. There are people who own properties in the middle of York, right? Who never had to pay barely, because they weren't worth much at the time, barely anything on those properties. Now they do what for a living? Nothing. They live off business rates or they live off rent. So if your father or your mother managed to own a house or own a property that happened to be in the town centre or something like that, they hand it on to their child who then does nothing for a living and just lives off the income from that. All I'm saying is, I'm not even saying you should take it all off them or anything like that. I'm not communist. All I'm saying is that a small tax on that transfer, that massive transfer of wealth to someone who's done literally nothing for it, I don't think is a particularly bad idea. I do think there is a benefit to society in doing that. And also, it should be the right that you should maybe have to work for it a little bit yourself. Just a little bit. I'm not saying a lot. But I'm saying that inheritance tax is not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to massive transfers of wealth like that. Remember, this is a person who's done nothing for it, essentially. So that's my opinion.
What do you think of that, Dad?
So you'd be if I'm understanding you correct, Basil, you, where inheritance tax is concerned, you'd like to see it remain, but have the thresholds raised.
Well, it's what it remains on. So, like I say, if you're handing down a business, that's different. But if it's just property or land, my question is it good to have a society that's built on the idea that basically you will be sorted for life if your parents, and society gets nothing back ever from it if your parents just hand it to you? Is that a good way to, when we talk about raising children, what we talk about is working hard, not I will work hard, you'll have to do nothing. I'm just going to hand everything to you and you'll be fine. And again, I'm not talking about taking it all off them. I'm not even talking about taking half off them. I'm saying there should always be a small percentage taken back, which you can obviously work for and put back in yourself. But the point is that there should be some societal benefit as well in that. Now, obviously, we can get into the realms of, is it good what we do with our taxes right now? I'd say no, right? We waste a lot of tax money. But the point I'm saying is that if we live in a world where families can just accumulate more and more wealth and society gets literally nothing back, that's not necessarily a good thing either. So a small inheritance tax. Yeah.
Helen Crystals has just put society does get back because they get taxed on what they spend, etc.
Yeah, if they when they spend money, but that's what everyone pays. What I'm talking about is massive assets, because you've got to think like property, land, and so on often get passed down, and if there's literally nothing back, that person doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to manage it. They just literally live off the money that it makes, and that is unfair as well, and not good when you consider. I mean, like I said, they still will be super wealthy, obviously, right? But the point is they should have to give something back, in my opinion. Because again, if you've got someone who owns a property in a town centre or whatever 100 years ago, like many people in London now, all they've done is own an asset that because of market forces has gone skyrocketing in value through the roof. Is it fair to just hand it to their children and they're millionaires overnight just because they happen to be born in that patch? Whereas other people, because of bad luck, don't get that opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Like I say, a small payment back to society, I don't think is the end of the world. And I think it can be seen as a good thing, in fact.
Dad, what do you think of
that? I take your point, Basil. I can understand what you say. And I do see the sense in that. I suppose... it's like Devil's Advocate said, but is that a parenting issue or a government issue? He sort of said there, and it could be looked at in that way as well. I mean, it's the values that you instill as parents on your children that should make them what they are, not necessarily the prospect of having a windfall. Sorry, that's Patrick Reed's just put on here. It's bad policy, because you have to rely on the government's opinion on the type of property in question and constantly dealing with the consequences of currency devaluation. Yeah, I mean...
Look, to be fair, though, that's the same regardless of which tax. I mean, there's certain foods that are not taxed, there's certain foods that are taxed. Government sets it, then they've got sugar taxes and stuff. The government will always decide what gets taxed at what rates and stuff like that. All taxes, I mean, if you turn around and say that inherently you think inheritance tax is unfair, then all taxes are unfair, right? Because it's like, you know, you can say, well, this person worked for this, so why do they have to pay a tax when they die and give it to their children? Well, at the same time, you can say, listen, I work for my money. Why do I have to pay taxes when I purchase a product? But it's because the country needs money to exist, right? To have the society we live in, we need money to survive. If you want to live in a low tax society, go and look at the many countries in Africa and Asia that don't have high taxes and look at the standard of living and the criminality that goes with it and all the rest of it. The question is how do we raise that money? The point is, lots of different taxes, I've not got a problem with them. Keep them low and keep them fair and consistent. And like I said, I think when it comes down to who you can tax fairly in society, someone who has literally not worked at all for that thing, I think taking a small tax is absolutely fine. Whereas I would have a much bigger, my concern would be things like VAT, sales taxes, you know, where it's like, you know, you're paying taxes on on sweets and stuff like that. Like that to me seems much more egregious than, you know, massive estates and properties. And remember, I'm not saying every property. I'm saying over a very high value is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about millionaires here. I'm not talking about the average person.
Right. Well, I'm looking at society as a whole, and I think that the taxation system we have in the UK is excessive.
Absolutely.
I think it's far too pervasive. I don't think we allow the working poor enough of their own money to help grow the economy in the way it should be growing. I think if people had more money in their pockets, they would spend it and they would help generate a healthier economy. I don't think overtaxing people is the answer. I understand governments need funds to run certain things, but I also understand that governments waste a hell of a lot of money.
They do.
On absolutely
100%,
ridiculous things. You know, like we were talking about the carbon tax and God knows what else, or people, you know, or for example the ULEZ tax in London, for example.
Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that.
You know, let's tax the hell out of the motorist and then slap a ULEZ charge on them as well, pretending that it's for clean air.
It's rubbish.
I don't think anyone's actually explained to Mr. Khan how air works, that it actually moves with the next breeze that comes along.
Well,
and you can't protect that air.
I've said this, Dave.
Unless London has got plans to cover itself in a dome somehow.
I didn't say that, Basil, the other day.
You did, yeah. And I agree. By the way, again, taxes again are chosen on the basis of least impact, most reasonable, and so on. Like ULEZ, for instance, I would say that's a terrible tax because at the end of the day, who's it taxing? Well, people who either, i.e., can't afford a new car anyway, that's why they're driving an old dirty one, or two, van drivers who are workers. So why are you taxing work? You know, this is what I'm saying. The taxes should be aimed at things where it's like I say, so like this is why I say the inheritance tax, while people have got a very good reason for saying they're against it, but it makes sense to me because if we have to tax things, surely taxing someone who's literally done nothing for that other than just happened to be born into that family, again, I think is fairer than, say, other taxes where, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there'll be a point where we could say, let's just get rid of that one as well because it's not required. But the point is, if there are taxes that we've got to try and raise money from, that's a fairer one than many others I see. Like, for example, you'll remember VAT was never this high. It's now at 20%. That was meant to be a temporary measure during the 2008 crisis, was never meant to get this high. That's a tax on nearly enough everything, right? That reduces the economy as well. So things like that, I would much rather see pared back so that you can turn around and say, well, you know, again, poor people pay VAT at the same rate as rich people do, of course, because they're just purchasing products. But why would you deny them the opportunity to buy occasional luxury items because you're slapping 20% on something? Who is this helping? Do you know what I mean? So those are the kind of things where I sit there and go, that would make for a fairer society. Before you do any of that, of course, so you have to look at the horrendous amount of government expenditure, which obviously I think we can all agree on is just out of control. And this is why, by the way, at the next budget, they're going to struggle to raise taxes on anything because everybody knows what they're wasting money on.
I hear as early as just earlier on today, there's a possibility they won't be raising income tax now at the next budget because they were surprised by a better than what they thought forecast for the country. So there's a possibility now they won't be raising income tax. So at least that's one small positive.
Yeah.
To pull out of the fire. Sorry, that's the dog barking. In the back.
Rachel Reeves got booed at the Business Awards last night, by the way.
Ralphie, shush. Mate, what do you think? What's your opinion on us following suit with the service charge taxes when you say, like, when you're out of restaurants and that, like following America?
The service charge taxes.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that's not long been in, has it?
No.
What, in America, you mean? Service charge.
When you go to a restaurant in the UK, and you buy a meal, right, in a restaurant, and then you get the bill at the end, right? It says service charge tax, and it adds an extra charge for the service charge. Like that's not always been there.
Well, the only tax I'm aware of that is
Am I right?
is VAT. When it's a service charge added on top, that tends to be done by the actual restaurant themselves as an automatic thing to pay extra to their wait staff or whatever. It's because they want to try and they've tried in the UK relentlessly to bring in the idea of tipping like they do in America.
That's
what
I'm getting at.
Yeah, I hear it's So when they say service charge, it's not a tax. Like that's not done by the government. That's just the restaurant calling it whatever they want. They're just basically adding on an extra charge. I listen to me. You want to put
Eric's
charge?
Just stated service charge isn't a tax.
Yeah, it's not like a real tax. But what they do is they add a percentage onto anything, and they'll tell you now what it is because they want to pay their. Apparently, it's to pay the staff more. Look, the truth is, you can charge what you want. Do you know what I mean? People, what I don't like about it is when they put the food prices on the menu and then they don't tell you what the true price is because the service charge is not included. So you think you're paying 20 quid or whatever for this meal, and then later you get the bill and it's 25, and you're like, well, because the service charge is not incled. I hate that, and I think I would make that illegal. I think the whole prices should be included with the food.
Look, this is how I personally think it should be. You open up your menu in the restaurant when you sat down at your table, right? You're looking at what you want to eat. You decide what you want to eat. You can see the price next to it, right? Okay, this meal's going to cost me 20 quid, right? Okay, do you know what I mean? There's three of us here. That's going to be 60 quid, right?
Yeah, it's wrong.
Same thing, right? Yeah. Go pay the 60. Go to pay the £60, but then it's not £60. They go right. Service charge on top of that. It's now it's £75 or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I hear it. Yeah. Some retailers do this thing where they try to be like Americans as well, and they won't include VAT on the price of stuff, and they add it on at the end, and you sit there and go, "That's not. Come on, do you know what I mean? Be better than that." So no, I'm against it, and I think it's terrible. And I won't. Just like some guy has just said, I won't shop at those places. Yeah.
100%. Like some guys pointed out here as well, service charge is optional. Depends on the establishment. I refuse to eat in any restaurant that sneaks on extra charges at the end.
That's quite right. And people will vote with their wallet.
Absolutely.
If unscrupulous businesses want to run that risk, they'll find they're sitting in an empty premises.
And I agree with what Eric's just put. They should include service charge on the menu. So they should literally put it in the menu. Right, this is what the service charge will be at the end of your bill, whatever. So then
it's not hard to do.
At least you're aware of it, like, and how much it's going to be on their bill. And then instead of just thinking, like I just said, 3 meals at 60 quid.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather see it in black and white and go, right, I know what I'm paying, instead of them sneaking it on at the end.
Well, it's always a percentage. It's never a fixed price. So it doesn't matter. They could just add it on. Do you know what I mean? Whatever the food is, add that percentage on automatically and you've got it. So,
100%. Yeah. So I want to digress a little bit, mate. I want to move on to the constant threat now of open borders, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to say China or Russia or something. Right? Okay.
Mate, honestly, do you know what? I think this is always going to be prevalent, right, to the British people, because this is an ongoing threat that's happening that's not being dealt with. The government aren't dealing with it. Do you know what I mean? Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, she is incapable of closing our borders off, irrespective of the fact that you've got constant men coming over here, being escorted into Dover all nicely by the RNLI, right? So they're escorted to safety, and then they get processed and put into hotels, HMOs, etc. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the vast majority of them, we don't know where they come from, and they've all and you don't know what ideologies upstairs in their head. Do you know what I mean? The increasing rise of illegal migrant crimes is constantly rising every single day. I mean, Basil, every single day there's an incident where someone's been raped, someone's been killed, right? Or someone's been sexually assaulted, or someone's being followed, right? And it's always pointing the finger back to these illegal migrants that are coming over here, and that we're not dealing with them properly. Do you know what I mean? And I think people like to throw. I mean, at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of the leftists. They're constantly throwing the racist card at people like myself, so many other people that think that agree with the fact that this is a major threat. I mean, it's a threat to life because there have been murders. You know, you've got Wayne Broadhurst, you've got that girl's name was saying that, is it Rhiannon White?
Yeah, Rhiannon White.
Yeah, Rhiannon White. Like, you know, she worked at one of these
migrant hotels.
Migrant hotels, and it was one of the illegal migrants that was being housed in the hotels that she was working at that followed her to that train station, and then decided to kill her and stab her with a screwdriver and penetrate her skull, like literally. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know it's graphic, but it's this. Like, this is what this man done. He literally it penetrated her brain, and she was a young mum as well. So she's like, her child's now motherless, and but I don't understand why people go out a lot. There's constant protests that are happening at these migrant hotels, and I can understand that, and I understand why, and I agree with it, because do you know what I mean? The government and the police, they're not doing their job correctly. So as I was saying, you know, the other day, we've got to that point now in this country where people are having to police themselves, and literally you can't rely on the police or the government anymore for protection. You have to rely on your own communities where you live. You have to rely on each other to protect each other and to look out for each other, because you know what I mean? You're not getting that from the police anymore. You're not getting that, you know, from the government, the current government that we've got in this country. It's not happening. So people are having to, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say, look, I'm not going to say, oh, take the law into your own hands, all that lot. All I'm saying is people are having to, you know, up the protection for themselves and their families, because it's constant. It's every other day. There's an incident, right? Every other day, almost every day now, where like the people that you're literally seeing news alerts. Oh, stabbing. Oh, rape. Oh, do you know what I mean? Like, and you know, the thing that winds me up is the fact that the government will withhold the, you know, information such as the identity of the attacker, you know, because they don't want anything to kick off, because they already know that tensions are running high in the country, right? And they know for a fact that if it goes and gets pointed back to an illegal migrant, then people will be out on the streets where the incident took place, and they'll be protesting, they'll be marching, and they'll be literally it'll just start erupting. So, especially with the fact that, you know, you had that, you mean, just up the road from where I live, you had Wayne Broadhurst as well, who still hasn't been mentioned in Parliament, may I add, which is disgusting. I still don't understand to this day why they're not acknowledging that man. Like, he was literally, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was a binman. He was out walking his dog.
I can tell you why if you want.
And he jumped in to protect. I think didn't he jump? He tried to protect this failed asylum seekers landlord at the time, and the landlord's teenage son.
I can tell you why they're ignoring it if you want.
Go on.
Wayne Broadhurst. Listen. I'm only going off what I've been told. But I'll say allegedly with my lawyer's hat on. But allegedly, the illegal migrant who killed Wayne Broadhurst was on early release from prison under Labour's early release scheme, and that's why they don't want to talk about it. Okay. So there was a report. It was in the news at the time that a prisoner who had been early released had then committed a murder. That came out a couple of days after Wayne Broadhurst's murder. So I'm assuming those are the two things that are linked. I've been told they are the same person, but there's been nothing confirmed yet until obviously all the cases and that is resolved and it's gone through the system. But yeah, that's why I believe they're ignoring it. Yeah, I mean, again, these come down to choices, right? We don't have to do this. You know, the thing about the most worrying thing about our country, but also the most comforting thing, ironically, at the same time, is that all these problems are of our own making. So it's terrifying that people who are British or in Britain would do this to us, would put us through this. But because they are done to us by people here, we can fix these problems. All we have to do is just change our minds on them if we have the courage to do so. I mean, I got after our our debate, I won't say debate, after our chat last night, I got a few DMs from people sort of saying, you know, great debate and all that. It was really good fun. But one of the questions I got asked was, what advice would you give to reform right now in terms of how you could make them better? And I said, well, one of the things, I mean, I don't think we'd take my advice for what to make them better, because like I say, it would go through the things I mentioned last night, like democracy and so on. But one of the things they absolutely should be doing, regardless of my advice or not, is mountains of polling. And what they should be doing is pulling together polls over and over again of the British public, showing the case for deportations, showing the case for supporting what reform supports, so that any time, well, allegedly supports, so that any time the BBC or whatever turns around and says, you know, how have you got the authority to do this? This is a moral outrage or whatever. You just need to point to a piece of paper that says, look at this poll and look at this poll and look at this poll. The British people are with us, so are you against them? And that's the way that they should go about it. That will be the same advice for Advance or any other party that is pro-deportations in any way. Yeah, Helen, look, I agree with you, right? Look, they've got major problems at reform that are not going to get fixed overnight, okay? But that was just one of the ones that I thought was pretty reasonable you could get them to do. And the reason for that is because the vast majority of the British public don't want these people here. We forget that. And when people talk about borders being open stuff, it's because our politicians, they go against what British people want. The British people they've never voted for this. It's never been voted for. We discussed that yesterday. They lied in every single manifesto. So the question is why has this happened against our will? Why would they do this to us? Now, it depends on what kind of person. I used to always say I can understand why the Tories want cheap, uncontrolled immigration, because if you're the party of rich business people, then you sit there and go, well, this is great. It keeps rents high and it keeps wages down. Because if you bring in loads of poor people, you're now all competing for jobs. So I could understand why maybe some wealthy Tories, aristocrat type people would want this. But the Labour Party, who was supposed to be the party of the working class, I'd be like, where do you get off on it? And then if you meet these people, you realize why. It's because they're actually deluded. They live in a completely different world of their own imagination. And what they do is they see everybody on this planet is just temporary, disheveled people who want to act like British people. You know, they think that when an Afghani migrant crosses the border into the lands in Manchester or whatever, all of a sudden he puts on a parka and he acts like Liam Gallagher. Do you know what I mean? That's what they think happens. They think that these people will become British over time, and it just ain't that simple. You know what I mean? Immigration only works when it's a very select few of people. It's very low levels and it's done over a very long period of time. So when it's like one family arrives in a state of British people, that one family has no choice but to integrate because every single person they interact with is British. Okay, that's the only time it works. When it's lit, I mean, the way we've done it is the British people move out of an area and these other areas become like a different country. And that's where the problem is. So when you talk about open borders, Shawnee, I mean, it's not just us. It's France, it's Germany, it's Italy, it's every country in Western Europe has bought this nonsense hook, line, and sinker. And we are on the precipice of losing the British people as an actual ethnic identity. Our demographics are terrible. And unfortunately, as I said yesterday, there's not a single major party in Parliament right now that wants to deal with the issue, and I include Reform in that as well. So what I'm looking for is for a party to stand up and say, actually, we have a proposal not just to deport illegal migrants. That shouldn't even be up for debate. If you're an illegal migrant, you should be gone, okay? That shouldn't be controversial.
Right.
And like I say, even, like, no offense, Rick, but, you know, Reform, the best they can do right now is say we will deport criminals and single adult men, right? No, women and children too. If they don't belong here, they need to go home, right? It's not our problem. So deport every illegal migrant.
100%.
That should be the standard. But then when it comes to legal migrants, there are other big wins. Are you on benefits? You're gone. Are you using social housing? You're gone. Have you not had a job for the last 2 months? You're gone. And so on. We can go down the chain here of legal migrants and say they have to go too. To be honest with you, I personally think we need to go even further than that, because the question that it comes down to is who is this country for, right? The British Isles are for British people primarily. So if you have a father or a mother who is British, or you have ancestry from these islands, then that priority is for you. There are other countries around the world that the priority for them is for their people. It makes absolute no sense to me whatsoever that you can have 2 migrants arrive in Britain, have a child, and that child is British. No, that child is the child of 2 migrants. Where's the British bloodline there? Listen, I'm not saying every single immigrant should be kicked out of this country, right? Some of them do great work and they actually are beneficial to society, but it is a tiny percentage that actually are. The vast majority should never have been allowed here in the first place. And the first party that stands up with a chance to get elected and says that will be a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got a couple of I'm just going to catch up a couple of these comments, Basil. We've got a lady, a northern working class female. Islam and importing Islam terrifies me. I'm a Christian and want the UK to remain Christian. Women are possessions in Islam. It's medieval.
Absolutely correct.
I agree.
Absolutely correct.
I agree.
It's a huge clash of culture. And as Basil was saying, it's a matter of volume. If you have a drip feed of immigration, one has no other recourse but to integrate in the society in which you've emigrated into. And actually, that should be your goal anyway. If you've chosen a country to want to go to and to want to live in, if that happens to be the UK, then you should adapt yourself and adopt the customs and the laws and the ways of the people of your adoptive country. The problem is, as we're seeing now, as Basil's been saying earlier, is the volume. When you suddenly have a large volume of people from a completely different culture suddenly being dropped into the middle of the mix, the natural thing to do is for these people to group together. And instantly you're forming second societies within societies. Some would say ghetto societies, little Chinas, little Islams, little miniature communities of their own within our community. So instead of integrating, it actually segregates society. It splits us apart and it causes division. As Yam Yam was saying as well, it's not about religion per se, but Islam is a huge issue because it's the culture. It's the huge difference in the way men and women are treated. It's a huge difference in the way of respect, outlook. It's very much, if you look at the Quran, it's very much a religion that promotes a certain ethos, and it's quite an aggressive ethos.
Islam,
as well. If you're not, if you're in Islam and you want to leave Islam, that's a good reason not to be alive anymore. You know, we don't have that in Christianity. If you want to leave, you can leave. If you want to leave Islam, that could be a death sentence for you. If you're a woman in Islam, you are tantamount to chattel, you know, and you're an object rather than a person. Right. And that harks back to, you know, what we used to speak about when America was struggling with slavery, and a slave was worth I think it was 2/5 or 3/5 of a non-slave, and it's kind of that sort of value, that devaluing of human life. And as soon as you devalue human life and you have no respect for it, life becomes really cheap, and it's then easy to inflict horror, terror on society. And if you have a certain culture that doesn't respect the culture that they've just landed in, you're going to see a lot of criminality and a lot of crime because they have no respect.
Well, Islam is. I'm sorry, but Islam is a conquest ideology. That is facts, right? They breed like mad. They slowly but sure that they see that they slip into countries, right? Say for instance that hasn't got there's no, say like for instance there's no Muslims, etc., whatever. They breed like mad, and then they slowly but surely change the demographic of the indigenous population of that country, and the UK is a prime example of that.
I was just going to say, Rick, I agree with your summary on Islam, by the way. I genuinely do. Can I ask you a question? If you don't want to answer it, because obviously who you are, you just say you don't answer it, I'll move on, right? I'm not going to have a go at you for it. But do you have an issue at all with the fact that the Home Secretary is a Muslim?
Personally, this is in my opinion, shall we say? Let's phrase it that way. In my opinion, I've got a huge problem with Mahmood, especially when you see film of her going back just a couple of years of her and Sadiq Khan out on marches together, promoting a completely different point of view to the one she's trying to portray as Home Secretary. I don't believe she's being truthful with the British people, and I think she is hiding her true beliefs. So yes, I do have a problem with that.
And my follow-up question to that is, do you understand why maybe people have a problem with Zia Yusuf being the head of, Mohammed Zia Yusuf, to give him his full title as the head of Reform?
I do understand why people would be weary of that. I do. However, I'm very enthused by the fact that he was prepared to stand down and then was coaxed back by the amount of goodwill in people who actually said, no, you're doing a good job, come back. We understand you've been overworked in that particular area of the party. Let's put you onto something a bit more suitable for your talents, and let's keep you within. So they work very hard to keep him within the party.
Do you believe that story that they told?
I'd prefer not to comment on that.
Just for people listening, that's not what happened. I'll tell you that now. If you want to know what happened, where I did the interview with Lee Harris, I asked Lee Harris afterwards if I was right about what I said, and he said she was spot on. Yeah, Zia Yusuf knows where the bodies are buried. That's why he was they begged him to come back because he. I'll just say, I mean, you have to comment on this, Rick. I'll just say there was Andrew Pearce. You can go and read Andrew Pearce's thing he put out, and he was going to do a tell-all interview with Zia Yusuf after he left. He even announced that that's what was going to happen, and obviously Nigel put in the call saying, please don't reveal everything about us and all the rest of it. You've got to remember, Zia Yusuf runs the intranet as well for Reform. Yes, he does, yeah. So they would have lost a lot of the support, the help and tech level for that as well. So they'd have been screwed without him. I think it's actually quite dangerous how much power Zia Yusuf has over the Reform Party, and when you hear the stories about Tommy Robinson, when I interviewed him, the story he told about Reform, Nigel had a 25 grand a seat dinner with a load of donors, and the top table was him, Zia, and a load of Pakistani Muslims. This is what bothers me about reform, because you sit there and go, what is this party for? And it's true. I've looked into it. It's true. I've had a number of people back that up. So again, if anyone wants to hear it, go to itsonlypolitics.co.uk. Listen to the interview I did with Tommy Robinson. He confirms it all in there. The worrying thing for reform for me is you go, who's it for? And I think a lot of people have that issue. And when it comes to the question of Islam, I mean, we've had Nigel Farage just last year say that Islam basically needs to be pandered to. It can't be confronted. He said that on an interview. And then you've got to remember, his words weren't pandered to, but he did say along the lines of that we can't alienate political Islam. That's what he said. We can't alienate it. And when you sit there and think about that, and you go look at the demographics we've got, and you sit there and think, well, who's this party for? This is another reason why I have a serious issue with reform and worry, because, like I said, they've got an awful lot of people in there who, frankly, despise Zia Yusuf, and because not because he's a Muslim, because he's actually a really nasty bloke to them and stuff like that, lower level. But he gets to come back. Of all the people Nigel's fell out with, he gets to come back. So you sit there and go,
that was interesting, yeah.
It was, yeah. And look, Rick, I'm saying this to the audience, by the way. I'm not expecting you to comment on this. Obviously, you're in a very delicate situation there. I get that, right? And but it just worries me. It really worries me that you give him, like I said, Nigel's going to be 65 come the election, and he's not a well man as it is. He smokes, he drinks, he's been broken ribs, all the rest of it. And you sit there and you think, who's in the wings waiting to take this over? Well, when you look at who owns the business and who's got all the money in reform, well, it's him and Zia Yusuf. Nobody else gets to say on that. So you sat there going, well, it's obvious what they're trying to do. You know, that's a genuine worry to me. I genuinely think if Reform win the election, Zia Yusuf will become the first Muslim Prime Minister of the UK. And it's not because we won't get a say. The electorate won't get a say. It will be Reform that vote on that. So,
yeah, I mean, there's been rumour and conjecture that Nigel Farage will be the Moses of Reform. He'll lead them to the promised land, but he'll never get to see it. That's something that's been put forward by somebody who I won't report. But as you said, it does then beg the question: if it's not him, then who?
This is what I'm saying. When I was talking yesterday about the lack of democracy in the party and stuff, it's all set up that way so that someone can take over Nigel who gets the heads up from. I mean, the board is made up of, as you know, 3 people are elected now. That was again quite a fudge of an election because obviously the people who were classed as not fit or proper didn't get to stand, so it was picked on who could stand. But the point was that 3 people elected, but the rest of them are all appointed, and the appointed ones outnumber the elected ones, so it doesn't even pretend to be democratic. And then when you add all that up, and the fact is on top of that, the Nigel gets to say it as well. The people he appointed plus he gets a vote, and you sat there going, well, who gets to take over as the next leader? Well, you know. It's obvious to me. Like I say, why is it that every other party is set up as a party? The money goes into the party, but then every other one, Reform, it's set up as a business. The money goes into the business, so you haven't got control over it. If Nigel and Zia leave, it's game over.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's just true.
I've got to address this comment. Sorry. So hang on. Obviously, they got this comment here saying I personally have a massive issue with it. I agree. I do. Right. And I agree, not all Muslims are bad, but no Muslim should be in any form of power in a Christian country. That's just my personal opinion, right? Because then it's like they then start to, remold the way UK politics is run to suit, their beliefs. Do you understand where I'm coming from? In a way?
I can understand where you're coming from, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also address this comment here. Let's have a look at this. Charlie Danzo, why don't you lot say it as it is? You hate blacks, Asian, Chinese, and Jews. Stop with the pretending. No, I don't actually. I mean, I don't. Do you, Dad? Do you, Basil? Because I think that's just a bit of a silly statement to make. Well,
being of Anglo-Indian descent, that'd be really odd if I hated Asian people.
Mate, Charlie,
so that's quite
I am the son of a migrant. My dad was born in Madras in India, came on a boat to the UK in the 1960s.
A big boat, though, not one of the dinghies.
My nan, right?
Not a boat, it was a ship, actually.
Ship.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Same thing.
On that, right? I mean, I could flippantly say I hate everyone equally, but the truth is, right? I don't have a problem. Like, I'm not sat here going, we need to start closing down Chinese shops and stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? People like to take away and stuff, right? That's not the problem. The problem is when you look at the country and the demographics are so skewed now. It's, you know, like most countries, right? There is a small percentage of the population that was not from there, right? People are allowed to move around the world, right? I'm not sat there. If we were 90% British natives in this country, no one would be talking about this. And do you know how I know that? Because when it was that way, no one was talking about it like they do now. The problem is we're about to become a minority in our own country. That's where the problem is. And so I sit there and go, let's just get some perspective on this, right? There is a way forward on this where we can have a polite, well-run society where, like I say, immigrants come and contribute, and the ones that don't go. And we've got far too many of the ones that don't. That's part of the problem, okay? I am not sat there saying that, you know, every immigrant needs to leave this country. Absolutely not. And what would be the point in doing that? But it needs to be 95% for the people who are from here. That's what that is the purpose of a country, you know? And other countries are the same. China, for the Chinese. Israel's for the Jews. And obviously, many African countries are for black people. And obviously, you've got America. And obviously, you've got a British Caribbean community here. You know what I mean? So, again, these things should not be controversial. But we need a home too. We need a home too. We can't just give our home up. You know? And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
We got some questions here, right? Question to Shawnee and Basil. Would you go into politics? I would trust you both. Me personally, I wouldn't. Primarily because I'm too outspoken for my own good. And I'm a bit of a gobshite. Basil, on the other hand, I'll let you answer that, mate.
No, for the same reason. I'm a gobshite, and I like being a gobshite, and I like saying what I want. And listen, I think personally that in politics you need people with real good standing in society. I think the reason why our country has fallen apart quite a bit is because it's not just the lack of policy, it's the lack of morality in many of the politicians that we have, the lack of wisdom, the lack of great personality. And I just think that that's a major problem. And I am not that, right? So I've never pretended to be anything great or anything like that. The reason my name is Basil the Great on Twitter is because it was originally Basil the Great Mouse Detective. It just didn't fit. I don't think I'll ever go into politics that way. However, advising people, I've advised politicians already. I advise them now. I'm in touch with a lot of people in the media and politics and stuff, and I do give people pointers about speeches and things that they say and policy and stuff like that. And that's fun for me now. In the future, 10 years from now, maybe. But personally, do you know what, right? Because you won't know this because I'm obviously anonymous, but I'm young 30s, right? I think politicians should be over 40. I hate it when you see young people who are elected as politicians because you've not done anything with your life. You know what I mean? You need to grow a bit. You need to have a little bit of wisdom, which I think is far more important than academic qualifications. I think a bit of life experience is really important. So I actually would be in favour of raising the voting age and raising the age at which you can get elected, because we've got too many young people getting involved. Young people should be out having fun. They shouldn't be trying to run the country.
Hang on, what we got here? David Gregson, when he kicked the bloke out of Clacton's seat to run himself, there, Mirage lost my trust. Dad, what you got to say about that one?
That's Tony Mack.
That's Tony Mack. I actually interviewed Tony Mack the other day. I mentioned it to you.
He watched the interview last night as well. He DM'd me afterwards. Good man, Tony Mack.
I think you'd probably be in a better position to answer this than me, actually.
Your dad will get in trouble if he answers it. It's horrible, Rick. It's horrible because you would. Do you know what, right?
Get that one.
I'll answer it, right? The thing is, Nigel Farage did the dirty on Tony Mack. And if you watch Shawnee's interview with him, you'll know that that's what happened. Or if you watch the interview with Ben Habib, Tony...
did you watch the interview I done with Tony Mack, Farrell?
I certainly watched... I can't remember if I watched the whole thing, but I remember watching part of it, half of it or something, yeah. The thing is with Tony is that basically, and I've heard the clip, it was recorded. It got sent to me. There was a recorded phone call. Nigel said, if you've done all the work, Tony, you've managed to get Reform into a great position here. If you stand down and give me the seat instead, I will look after you. There'll be a job for you. We'll keep you in the party. And obviously Tony then, all right, then I'll stand down. And Nigel just binned him off. It was so horrible. You know what I mean? But this is who Nigel Farage is, unfortunately. So, yeah. I've heard it. I haven't heard the full phone call, but there is a clip of the phone call where he says that bit. I have heard it. I can categorically confirm I've heard it.
Okay. They got Charlie, hang on, Eric. Integration is literally the bare minimum, speaking the language, bantard, knowing how to make a cuppa. You don't need to drink a pint or eat Sunday roast if you're religious, whatever. And then you've got, hang on 2 seconds. Some guy, Uncensored Patriots. The country is shifting to the right. Your outspokenness is going to be the mainstream in 10 years' time. It's 50-50, I think.
Do you know what? The country's actually shifting left and right at the same time. So what you're noticing is a polarisation. So the Labour Party is now getting subservient by the Greens. The Greens are taking that spot, who are obviously further to the left than the Labour Party are. So what you're seeing is a polarisation of views. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because most people are actually on the left and right on different issues and are more extreme than the middle of the road parties. So, for example, like me, you could argue some of my views were quite left-wing. Like, for example, I want the energy sector to be nationalised. I want British Rail to be nationalised. It doesn't work. I've looked into it. It just doesn't work, the private sector, for some of these things. Water should be nationalised, in my opinion. I want a strong capitalist economy, but things where you've got no choice over it, that means no competition, they should be nationalised. That's a very left-wing to say. But on the right, I want maximum. I'm in favour of the death penalty. I'm in favour of closing the borders. I'm in favour of massive sentences, really, really upping our prisons and locking people away for life and all sorts. So yeah, I'm one of those people, and the vast majority of people you'll find out there are exactly the same. They are extreme on the left, extreme on the right. But the truth is, it's just common sense.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the one thing that's in short supply in Westminster. It's common sense, but I do agree with what you're saying.
Do you know what? It's one thing. If I was advising reform, I would say is one thing you can make a massive win on is on crime, and I genuinely think that they should look to the likes of Nayib Bukele in El Salvador and say, you know, listen, we can fix this. He managed to turn his entire country around, and do it by basically admitting that some people cannot be reformed. So why not stop taking chances and just lock them up for life? You know, I'm a big fan of, you know, this 3 crimes and your life sentence thing. I really am. If you can't stop committing crime, then lock them up forever. Just do it, right? And I don't care about the human rights, okay? If you commit 3 crimes, make it 5 crimes. I don't care, whatever the number needs to be. But the vast majority of violent crime is committed by repeat offenders of crime. They've built up to that point, right? They've been in trouble with the police previously. We will save so many lives, so many girls from being raped and so on, if we deal with people who are younger who have major problems. You cannot save everyone. And unfortunately, our establishment seems to think that you can, that, you know, everyone can be reformed and all this. I can't. You see some of the sentences that rapists get. Rapists should never see the light of day again. They should never be out of prison. They're not safe. If your brain can go to that disgusting place, you will never be safe in society. And yet they get 10, sometimes a lot less, 4-year sentences. I've seen them thrown about sometimes. So again, when it comes down to it, You need to turn around and say, let's get real about it. And I personally think that will be a massive win for reform. If they turn around and said, listen, we're going to build massive prison program. Doesn't even have to be in the UK. We've got islands all across the world where we can store these people, and just say, we are going to start locking up people with massive sentences to drastically reduce the knife crime in this country, the terrorism, and all the rest of it. Wow, what a difference that would make.
And I think you could instantly make some more room in the prison systems if you got rid of the
the migrants
that need to be perhaps in a different country.
Yeah. It's over 10,000 prisoners are migrants. They weren't even born here. And do you know what it is, right? The stats on everything is skewed. You know, when you talk about criminality amongst migrants and obviously migrant prison spaces and all that stuff, we're just counting the people who weren't born in the UK and don't have British citizenship. There is a lot of them who are now British citizens, weren't born in the UK. They should be included as well. Take the citizenship off them, get rid of them. And also, a lot of them are the children. They don't have a mother or a father who was born in Britain. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, if you haven't got a mother or a father born in Britain, you're not British. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that means you have to leave if you're a good law-abiding citizen, but at the end of the day, that to me means you are not British, and therefore you should be included in those statistics. There was a study done on Palestinians who went to Denmark, right? Palestinians who went to Denmark in 1992. I haven't got the figures to hand, but you can go and look them up. They looked at the Palestinians themselves and their children. Over half of them ended up in prison or committing crimes. Over half. Which goes to show it's not just them, it's their children. You've seen it recently with certain attacks and stuff like that. Axel Rudder-Cabana, perfect example. Born in Wales to 2 migrant parents. Okay? That's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Have we got any more questions there?
Yeah, sure. We've got loads. Hang on. Bob said, do you think democracy is the way forward? It feels like we're already outnumbered.
Can we answer that first? Or
yeah, I'm just looking at the question again. Do you think democracy is the way forward? As opposed to what? If you don't
alternatives are pretty nasty.
If you're not going to have democracy, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
An autocracy? I don't think that's going to work either.
Rick, get over to advance once they're registered.
Thanks, Helen.
Well, after Farage sees his speech about Islam earlier, I think he might have to, but we'll see. No, look, on democracy, right? I genuinely think that democracy is the only way ever forward, because you have a job to convince people of your arguments. Doing things against the will of people never works. It always ends in tyranny. So democracy is the only way forward.
Has to be. Yeah, absolutely.
James Dockery says our country needs a Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, ain't it? Ant Middleton, now there's a leader.
Problem with that sentence is that we have a different political structure to the United States. We couldn't have a Donald Trump even if we wanted one. There is no one single person that holds that amount of power in our system. It's a completely different system. I agree with the sentiment, though. It would be nice if we could cut through some of the red tape and actually do something once we're in, once a politician's in power, and actually affect real change. But I think, as we touched on this, I think we touched on this yesterday, didn't we, Basil, about the amount of power that MPs per se have, as opposed to the civil service, the permanent structure in Westminster that seem to hold all the cards, and the ministers have very little power at all. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously democracies are not perfect. They're the kind of worst best option, but they are still the worst the least worst option. Sorry. When people, I saw what was her name? Sorry, Helen Crystal's put up saying a lot of youngsters want a dictator frightening. The truth is, Helen, again, this is why I think young people shouldn't necessarily be asked what they think about the countries around. I genuinely think that, right? I actually made a case. I put a tweet out once and it got surprising support for how many people think the voting age should be raised as default to 25, with exceptions for military. And I also said if you've had a child or if you've worked in the working world for a full year, full time for a year. But the reason being is that what young people, what they mean when they say that is, I wish I ran the country. That's what they mean. And the reason why people don't like dictators, or why they do like dictators, is depending on who the dictator is, whether they agree with them or not. You know what I mean? And that's the truth of the matter. So what you'll find is that the biggest Democrat in the world is someone who lives in a country where the dictator doesn't do what they want, and the biggest fan of an autocracy in the world is, usually the dictator's best mate or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it works that way. Democracy is hard. It's not meant to be easy. It's a slog. It's difficult. But the point is, we're all invested in it, and that's why it's the best way forward.
Yeah. So what's just one last point on that comment by James Dockery. Obviously, I can feel the frustration coming out in your statement. But as we've just said, if we want to affect real change, we have to have wholesale reform in the civil service first. But I'll leave that point alone now.
It'd be great if Rick joined Advance UK. I've seen Rick on the stream and yesterday's stream. And Rick seems like a very nice guy, likeable, genuine and patriotic, like you, Sean and Basil. Common sense. Cheers, mate.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. Thank you.
You know what? You will get a lot of. I'm hoping Reform relax a lot of their rules around what people can and can't say and stuff, because of the fear of people just jumping across to Advance UK if they get kicked out. Because it used to be you get kicked out, you had nowhere to go, no one would take you. But now Advance UK would take you. So yeah, no, I would say to Rick, he should stay wherever he feels best, served, and where he could serve his people. But for other people who have had problems in Reform, Advance UK, I'm sure, will start taking them on board. And do you know what? It'll be interesting when that electoral commission thing goes through and we see the numbers and we see how many people start switching across, because that will give a kick up the backside. And as we discussed yesterday, Rick, competition is a good thing.
Correct, yeah. And healthy competition on the right, I don't think is going to be necessarily a vote-splitting thing. I'm not sure if Advance are going to be that advanced at the time of the next election to be in that sort of position. But the fact that they are there and that they do exist might force Reform and some of the other parties to maybe rethink some of their policies, and hopefully the competition will force them all to be a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Here's a question for, I missed this. What worries you the most about Northumberland Council?
I'm guessing that's directed at me.
So I brought it up.
Seeing as I'm a Northumberland county councillor. What worries me most about the Northumberland County Council? I suppose, as I said earlier, yesterday, for those of you who didn't see yesterday, I'm not a career politician. I'm just a regular guy that got elected to the council. Last May, there was a big call from Reform. Can you step forward? Can you help represent the party at the local elections? I was one of those guys. I'm just a bus driver, okay? Just a regular, ordinary guy. So didn't fully understand how councils work. And I was hoping that, yes, we'd be able to get in there. If we're voted in, we'd be able to affect real change right from the word go. And then once we got in, we realised that at a county council level, a lot of the spending is already earmarked years in advance. Programs run over 5, 6, 7, 10-year periods sometimes. So despite being elected in and having all this hope and promise, you're suddenly faced with this mountain of stuff that you can't do anything about at all. A lot of these things are in situ, and there's huge guidelines on what you can and can't do. I would say there's probably about 80% of the stuff that I found at the county council you're never going to be able to affect at all within the first term of you being in office, let alone if you're lucky enough to be there for the second term. So you kind of have to suck it up, deal with what you've got. it will seem a little bit like people are tinkering around the edges. And I'm sure this is not just applies to Northumberland County Council, but applies to other councils up and down the country. People will feel a little bit like their hands are tied, but stick it with it, stick in there, get through that first term. Hopefully we'll be in a stronger position for the second term, when we'll then be able to affect real change with real policies.
And all things film with Yam Yam. I'm working class and proud of it, but the working class really need to vote. I understand why they don't, because we've always been let down and walked over, but our voices matter. Our vote matters.
I think you're going to see Yam Yam, isn't it? I think Yam Yam, you're going to see that the next couple of votes that we do have, I think you're going to see a higher turnout. This last Labour government, although technically they won on a landslide, it was with a very low vote turnout. So it was kind of a false win, if you like. They've got the power, or they've got the numbers, but they didn't really have the will of the people behind them. And I'm thinking, with everything that's gone on, and maybe because people are so dissatisfied with the way the current government are performing, that they will turn out in their huge numbers to support a party that really wants to affect change. We touched on this yesterday, Basil and I, and we spoke about the previous incumbent parties and how a party like Reform would have the edge over them at the next election, because they haven't been, they don't have this history of being lied to on manifestos, etc. And they'd probably have a better chance with a fresh slate. Sorry, yeah, I'm saying something else there.
Yeah, he's also put, did you hear that apparently those that are coming in are going to get baptized that way? If and when a crime happens, they will say they are Christian again. Another attack on Christianity, our culture.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, lefty lovies don't only exist in politics, they exist in the Anglican Church as well. There's a lot of misguided people in all walks of life, and I think this is just ought to be called out for what it is. It's an out-and-out con, and I don't think a token dunking of your head under the water or placing a cross on your forehead with your thumb is suddenly going to turn you into a Christian, when every fibre in your body aches for a different religion. I think it's a con.
Also, James Dockery, sorry, mate, I missed your comment back up the top. Yeah, we have got a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel name is the Uncensored Patriots Official. So literally just go to YouTube, type that in, mate, and it will come up straight away. All right, mate? And that's to anyone else who's wondering if for the channel name. Moxie Don. What this country needs is exactly what we're doing here: communicating, looking out for each other, giving hope, not loyalty to a party, but loyalty to each other. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree any more with that, mate. We're bang on the money there, mate.
Yeah, Moxie, this is something else that we touched on yesterday. Basil and I were saying about transparency and communication being key. So you're absolutely on the money there.
We got one from Eric here. What do you think about people who built their lives in the UK and are now choosing to leave as things get worse, i.e. high tax, high crime, etc.? How do we retain talent, high-skilled workers?
We need wholesale reform. We need wholesale, and I don't mean that in the name of the political body. I mean, we need whole-scale reform of our actions as a government. Everything they're doing is anti-business, anti-growth. They're scaring away some of the brightest minds to other countries. We've got a brain drain happening in the UK. This tiny little nation that we live in has given some of the greatest gifts to the world, with inventions and with the technologies that it's displayed. We wouldn't even be sitting here live streaming on the internet if it wasn't for Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who actually created the thing. who was a Brit. So we're indebted to these people, and the fact that we're treating these people so badly is so short-sighted. It's an absolute national disgrace. We should be doing everything we can to promote these people, to help these people, to assist these people, because if these people succeed, then the country succeeds.
100%. Hang on, he's put.
Sean, I don't know if you're using your phone, your mic or something, mate. There's loads of static coming through every now and then.
Is it gone?
It's gone there now, yeah, but it was doing it just before when you were talking. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Right. He's Yams replied back to you saying, totally agree. Many churches have become a disappointment, especially the Church of England. It's not Christian. There hasn't been for a while. It's completely woke.
Yeah. I recently visited a new church group in Blythe, which is the Northumberland town in which I live. And I was speaking to some real political refugees that have come over from the continent of Africa, that are currently experiencing what can only be described as a Holocaust of Christians perpetrated on them by the African Muslims. They've come here as legitimate refugees, and they've set up a small church, which myself, as deputy mayor, and my colleague, the mayor, were asked to attend and have a look at. We were only too happy to go along and support them. Fantastic people, true Christians, wanting to promote the true word of Christianity. And it kind of reminded me of how Christianity in this country could be and used to be some years ago. It was more enthusiastic. It was more honest. And it was less preachy. It was more accessible. And it kind of showed me that we could return to our roots with Christianity. And perhaps the Anglican Church could learn a thing or two from these people.
Some guys put, what does Rick think about the digital ID, and why did all the Reform MPs refuse to sign Rupert Lowe's against it?
Right. Yeah, so if I'm reading that right, you're saying that about the Rupert Lowe suggesting that we ought to all be against digital ID, and loads of the Reform MPs refused to side with him and sign with it. Okay. As I found out at politics at a local level, and I don't want to sound preachy now or as if I'm talking to people that don't already know this, but for those that don't, most political parties at all the different levels have what they call a whip. And a whip is the guy there that promotes the party line on whatever the official party line is. If you're told to vote by a whip in a certain way, the idea is that you're whipped into submission, if you like, and you vote the party way, irrespective of your own personal feelings. Sometimes you have a free vote, and then you vote with your conscience or with the will of the people that elected you, your electorate. Sometimes it's a whipped vote. In other words, the party want you to vote in a certain way. What do I think about digital ID? I can answer you in my own personal opinion. I'm not for digital ID. I think there's enough things in my wallet to identify who I am, and I don't think we need it. And I think the pretense that they wanted to introduce digital ID as some form of taking on the illegal immigrants was a complete ruse, a complete bogus statement. And I think there's ulterior motives behind it. I personally wouldn't support it. That's my personal opinion.
I'll answer the rest of that question, by the way, because Rick can't. Why did all the Reform MPs refuse to sign Rupert Lowe's thing against it? Yeah, every single proposal that Rupert Lowe has put forward, right? Doesn't matter whether it's reform policy or not. Reform MPs, have not a single one has signed it, which goes to show how petty the hierarchy at the top of the party is. When people say that you should put your country first before party and stuff like that, that just doesn't exist within Reform, and it's frankly pathetic.
Okay, we've got one here. Eric says, what are your thoughts on the non-violent way to protest government policies through withholding payment of taxes, cash-only payments for individuals who are employed and not paying taxes for companies?
It's never going to happen.
No?
I've seen people say let's do strikes and stuff like that. The truth is, we live in a world now where people literally can't give up their incomes because they would lose everything. And unless you're all in it together, like it used to be when we had communities, it doesn't work. Strike action. I mean, the most recent mass strike action we had in this country, which refusal of payment is essentially a strike, was the miners' strikes in the 80s. Those people would have starved if it wasn't for the fact that they had massive communities that were working together to basically bring in food parcels and pay for bills. And that system is all gone now. Okay, they would turf you out of your home, you'd lose everything, and it would be for nothing because nothing would change. Unfortunately, the way our system has been set up now, where we aren't communities anymore, we're all individuals, is exactly what the government wants, because they can pick on individuals. They can't pick on everyone when they're united together, but they can pick on individuals, and they do that through the banking system, while withholding your money and all the rest of it. That's what happens. So the question is how do we affect the change? Well, the best way to do it is still at the ballot box, because, like I say, mass strike actions, unfortunately, or mass refusal of payments will just get people into poverty, into trouble, and unfortunately, some people will also go to prison for it.
Sorry, I'd just like to quickly say, I've just noticed a point that Helen Crystals has put up. She's put, in my opinion, the whip is wrong. MPs need to represent their constituency. Personally, I'm with you on that one, Helen. I think that free voting should be the way forward. I think the idea of whips is very outdated and should have been left in the last century where it belongs. Just wanted to say that.
So I want to digress. I want to move on to Starmer being ousted as the Prime Minister from within his own party.
Has it happened yet?
Please, God, let's get a breaking news alert. He's gone. But, like, yeah, I just don't know how long the man can go on for. How long can he sit in power in his current position?
Since we discussed it yesterday, there has been an update. Clive Lewis, an MP, actually came forward. Labour MP has stood forward today and said he needs to go publicly. Which, by the way, if Clive's saying that, there will be others who will come forward in the coming days and say exactly the same.
I think we're going to see a lot. I agree with you, Basil. I think we're going to see a lot of stalking horses coming out of the Labour woodwork, and they might not necessarily be the names we think they're going to be, because there's a lot of backbench support for names that aren't necessarily in the newspapers every day. So I think we need to watch this with interest, as I think things are going to unfold pretty quickly.
I don't think he's going to last till 2029. That's just my personal opinion.
Oh God, no, he won't.
No.
But can you imagine how bad it would be? I mean, I'm pretty sure that Ed Miliband is a front runner.
You've got to remember that the reason why it hasn't happened yet is because there's no obvious successor. And the dearth of talent in the Labour Party is the problem that they've got with pulling the trigger. So what they're waiting for, in my opinion, is there's a faction who want, weirdly enough, no one wants Sadiq Khan as far as I'm aware. Only person who wants Sadiq Khan is him, right? So a lot of people keep saying Sadiq Khan's going to run for it and all the rest of it. There aren't many MPs who I know of who have backed Sadiq Khan anyway, and that's Labour insiders telling me that. However, Andy Burnham is massively popular and he's untainted.
Why do you think Sadiq Khan does that?
What, sorry?
Why do you think that Sadiq Khan constantly sits there and plays on the thick card when he gets asked a simple question?
It's an easy way to get out with things. It's to just turn around and say, I don't know. I mean, with the grooming gangs, he's done that a lot.
Yeah, mate, but it's such a fragile and such a serious issue that they're talking to him about.
Yeah.
Revolved around the Pakistani grooming gangs, and
Yeah.
especially when Councillor Susan Hall said to him,
Yeah.
Sadiq Khan, are you going to apologise to all the victims for, you know,
Well,
for saying that you didn't know about the grooming gangs?
Blues just posted there, Khan is arrogant. You're absolutely right. He's got a massive ego.
Yeah.
He also he's basically the king of London, right? So
He's very smug.
Yeah. And the way you got to remember, in the Pakistani community there, he is seen as a god, right? He gets they've got a very clan-like culture, and he's right at the top amongst the top of it, right? He has connections to certain more nefarious individuals. I won't go further into that. He's also got connections to the police force, and he is well entrenched, right, with all the right people who keep him at the top. And when you start believing, that butter wouldn't melt, right? You believe your own nonsense if you do that. When he sits there and goes, I don't know what you're talking about, he's always got a smug smile on his face.
Yes.
He knows exactly what he's getting away with. Sociopath, Sandy, well said.
Yes.
He has got a ring of sociopathy about him.
Here's my question to you quickly.
Oh, go on.
Here's my question to you quickly. Now, he received the knighthood from King Charles, right?
Yeah.
Do you think he would have received the knighthood if Queen Elizabeth was still alive?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, because they don't decide who gets the knighthoods.
Yeah.
It's the
sad,
politician. Yeah.
True,
It's
yeah.
true,
Do you reckon she would have knighted him?
She doesn't get a choice.
No, it's all what Baz was just saying there. That they will be given a list from government who they want to promote to those positions.
Yeah.
So when they say the Queen's New Year's Honours List or the King's New Year's Honours List, as it will be now, a lot of those names will have been provided by the government.
Yeah, they don't get a choice. But that's not the most egregious thing. I mean, it's an insult, but it's not the most egregious thing. Knighthoods, whatever they mean now, it's up to you. But the point is that what's gone on in the Labour Party, and I believe the knighthood would have been a payment of some sort for something. He's done that as a favour for something. And again, he's on the London scene. Keir Starmer's on the London scene. It'll have been, maybe it was agreed, I won't challenge you or whatever in the run-up. Or, the different things that go on. And honestly, politics is a dirty game, and it wouldn't surprise me. The one to look out for is Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham is untainted by so many different scandals that have hit. He's seen as a bit of a unifier within the Labour Party. Reform will lose votes to him temporarily. It won't stick because he'll be terrible like everybody else. But the point is, there will be people who'll go, oh, well, maybe Andy could, Northern voters, maybe give him a shot. And, there will be a small sea change there if he was to take over. But it won't last. It won't last because the party is rotten to the core, Little known fact about me, I used to be in the Labour Party, right? I was in there, you're talking 15 years ago now, right? But I was in there temporarily. I grew up in a working class area, a Labour area. Long story how I ended up in there, but it was through trying to raise money for a students' union, right? Bar, right? That I worked at. But you end up realising the easy way to get money is to get on the students' union, and they were dominated by the Labour Party. So, yeah, I ended up doing a bit of work. I was very proud of stuff we did in terms of looking after local parks and stuff like that. And that's what I thought it was about. And as time went on, I realised that basically there's an awful lot of psychopaths in the Labour Party who don't believe in working class values. They don't actually have working class people at the heart of they believe in this woke nonsense, right? That's going on. And I've got some crazy stories.
Well, why do they believe in that, though? I mean, it's not like we're talking. There's proper old blokes that literally are following this woke narrative, and I'm just like, how can you follow something that's so backwards, right? That has no like whiff of common sense within regards to what they're practicing and preaching out to people.
It's propaganda.
Like it's all completely nonsensical, and and the stuff that they're pushing onto children as well in the education sector. We've seen loads of stuff, like prime examples, like having transsexuals like read out storybooks to kids, like men in drag and stuff like that, and it's just like, what like when was that considered like a normal thing?
Well, some of it is deviancy, and some of it is people using it for their advantage. I mean, Sadiq Khan does not believe in this stuff, right? He's a straight up Islamist, right? But he uses it to his advantage so he can appear to be a nice guy, and turn and say the far right are after. This is it's a well plagiarized textbook for how to get people on side. Is to use the fear factor of nasty Nigel Farage is going to come along and he's going to deport anyone who's non-white and all the rest of it. And yet, you've got on the other side, we're the nice people who support LGBTQ. And you always say it doesn't matter what they're talking about, whether it be illegal migrants, whether it be gay people, whether it be trans people, whether it be whoever. It's always the most vulnerable people in society, that word that they use every single time. And again, it's the way they use it. The people who believe, though, Shawnee, the one that you're trying to get to, the true believers, those people, a lot of it is indoctrination. It's propaganda. They only get their news from one source that tells them that this is the truth. But a lot of it is ignorance as well. You tend to find they've read a little bit and not a lot. And someone with a little knowledge is often quite dangerous. So that tends to be the case as well. When I speak to people who are pro-trans or whatever, you'll find they've never heard these stories about men going into women's changing rooms. They think trans people a lot of the time are like very, very girly, like, they know the men deep down, but they're very, very girly men, They don't realise about the big, balding bloke or whatever who's just put a wig on and now gets off on going to women's stores. That's just the way they are. And it's the same with so many different things in society. Unfortunately, humanity is very, very susceptible to having an awful lot of energy to get really, really rattled up about things that they don't want to read about. They don't want to learn anything about it. Do you know what I mean? And that's just the way it is.
It splinters off into so many things, mate. Like,
I'll tell you a funny story.
The gender ideology, the multiple gender ideologies. Like, do you know what I mean? I identify as a cat. I identify as a dog. Do you know what I mean? And then all the pronoun. All the pronoun crap that they've literally pushed on children nowadays, right? Where it's now you've got, you've offended me because I'm not a he or a she, I'm a they. So you're supposed to address my pronouns as they. Would you like to come up, they? They, would you come upstairs, please, they? And we're going to go over there. So basically, do you know what I mean? And it's like, what sort of crap is that? Like, what sort of crap? Is that right?
Yeah, you've got to remember though as well that these people they justify
non-binary. What is that? What is non-binary? Sorry, I didn't even swear then, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm just saying what they justify it by saying that basically it's not hurting anyone. So just let them get on with it and live and let live sort of thing. But then you can pull out examples where you turn around and say, all right, well, what if I do this then? Would that hurt anyone? They go, well, I don't agree with that. And you find that people's barriers go up very quickly when it's not something that's seen as on their team. And so what happens is because they look at politics as a team sport now, where it's like you're either on side or you're not. And the left are really susceptible to this, to going, you're either with us or against us. There's no, you've met these people, right? Who'll turn and go, you don't believe in everything I believe, well, then you're a fascist then. Do you know what I mean? They're very susceptible to that. So what they do is they go, well, these people are on team. So even if they're being terrible, I'm going to pretend it's okay and I'm going to let it slide. Like what you'll find is a lot of these people go, listen, I don't want my kids to be like that. But if anyone else's kids want to be like that, it's absolutely fine. And you've got to remember, they've got to build their army, their cohort from somewhere, because a lot of the working class have deserted them. A lot of working class people are really conservative, like socially conservative, culturally conservative, small c. They don't believe in this stuff. So they have to get they remember, the left is about victimhood, right? It used to be the most oppressed people in society are the poorest. And then the poorest people went, you're a bunch of nut jobs. So they had to go and find other people they could say who are oppressed. That is the way it works. They literally need a victim cycle. By the way, it's a very profitable market. Jeremy Corbyn is a millionaire, remember, right? Yeah, you can make a lot of money out of victimhood.
Yeah. But also just expanding on what we're talking about, right? You've even got celebrities, right? This is what winds me up. Because a lot of the younger generation look up to celebrities as role models and idols, and look at that, I aspire to be like them. But literally, you've got celebrities that are going with the narrative just literally because they want to be paid more money, they want to gain more popularity, and it's like when they're even doing it now.
fan base.
Well, yeah, they don't want to upset their fan base, right? But it winds me up because they're literally going, you've got people like Adele, or you've got people like Paloma Faith, right? They're going, oh, my kid, do you know what I mean? My kid hasn't decided what they want to be yet, so I'm calling them they. Like as such, I mean, they haven't decided whether they want to be a boy or a girl yet, and their child's only like 3 or 4. I'm like, mate, I'm not being funny, but if you have a son or a daughter, yeah, right, literally, or I'm not being funny, but do you know what I mean? I've got boys, right? I have a son. I'm not going to go and buy him Barbie dolls, mate. I'm going to buy him boy stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Like, because why would you buy them stuff for the other sex? Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't, like, unless you're just trying to like confuse them, like, and think and make them think that that's one. I'm sorry, but I'm just a man's man. Like, literally, like, to me, I'm very black and white. Like, if you're born a boy, you are a boy. If you're born a girl, you are a girl. That is it. There is only male and female on the biological table. That is it. There's no other genders, right? You're either born with a penis or you're born with a vagina. That is it, right? That's what identifies you as a male or a female. End of, right? There's no in between. There's no this, that, or the other. But this is what I'm saying. And you've got celebrities that are constantly going with the flow, going with the narrative, and not wanting to upset their fan base, like my dad said. And they're literally using their kids and saying, "Oh, look, they haven't decided what they want to be yet. I'm letting them decide if they want to be a boy or a girl." You shouldn't even be thinking about that anyway, or even, narrating that type of commentary to the general public anyway about your child, when in actual fact, do you know what I mean? Like, your son's a boy, so you literally if you've got a son or if you've got a daughter, you go with what the gender is. So you literally don't come out with this crap saying, "Oh, they haven't decided what they want to be yet." No, if you've got a son, if you've got a son, then you've got a son. That is it. You go, right, yeah, my son. Not, oh, I haven't called my child a son yet because I'm allowing them to decide what they want to be. If they're, I don't know what they want to be yet, so I'm leaving it up to them. They're 3. You shouldn't even, that thought process shouldn't even be coming into your head, mate. Like, you should literally, you've got a son, you've got a daughter. Daughter, Barbie dolls, whatever. Son, yeah, come on, boy, let's go out and play some football. Do you know what I'm saying? That is how it should be. That is common sense. That is the way, that is the normal way, right? The woke way is what they're trying to push out, and all this crap, like what I was just saying. Am I right, Dad, or am I right? Do you agree with that, Basil?
Yeah, well, just remember, I mean, I'm not saying that we should have a license for these things, but just remember, right, if you want to drive a car, you need a license, right? If you do a test, if you want to become a specialist, you want to become a doctor, you do a test. There's tests for everything, but you don't have to pass any qualifications whatsoever to become a parent. So obviously not everyone is cut out for this, and like a lot of people, what they do is they take on board advice that's really bad because of the circles that they exist in. You mentioned acting, right? And again, these industries are completely dominated by one set of thinking. It used to be that people would say politics doesn't matter. Whatever you believe is up to you, right? What I'm interested in is your ability to do this job, and it's changed now. They want people, they want to know your politics, they want to know what you think about things, and they want to judge you accordingly. They want to make sure they're surrounded by people who agree with them. This is part of the problem in the media as well. The media now, we literally have a society where we know what channels to go to that will reinforce our beliefs. People who, this is why it's the best people to follow online are the people who will disagree with you, who will make you think, who will have a conversation, just like me and Rick did yesterday, and say, like, and today, where we disagree on these things about reform or whatever, but we can walk away and say, you know what, fantastic conversation, would love to do it again sometime, and they were here tonight. That's gone out the window. And just to bring the conversation full circle before we finish, because it is getting late, if you mentioned the BBC at the start, right? Now, the BBC, people might not know this, but they did a groundbreaking study once, right? And it was on gender, right? Now, as you said yourself, there are only two genders. There's many agendas, but there's only two genders, right? But the BBC wanted to prove that there is no, these stereotypes we've built up around boys and girls are not innate and not natural, right? And so what they did was they did a study where they got boys and girls who were very, very young. These are toddlers, so they basically haven't had much in the way of life experience. And they put them in a room with boys with Barbies and girls with Action Men. And they played with the toys. And they said, look, this shows that the babies are basically playing with what we tell them to play with, which shows that we're pushing this stereotype on them. And that went out all across the BBC and the airwaves. This was about 15 years ago, this study happened, right? And it went out everywhere. Now, it took about 10 years for someone to turn and say, hang on, that's not a real study. Let's put the babies in the room with all the toys and let's see what they play with. And sure enough, the boys picked up the trucks and the Action Men, and the girls picked up the Barbies and the dolls. All they proved was if you don't give a baby any toys, they will just play with anything, right? But if you give them the choice, that's what they go for. Now, the reason why I bring that story up is because it goes to show how dangerous the BBC, biggest media entity in this country, has put that out in the airwaves. So you can imagine what they're saying behind the scenes to people who work there. Oh my God, you think there are only two genders? Well, you can't work here. That sort of thing has happened. 96%, it was reported, of BBC staff voted Remain in the Brexit debate. That is insane for a non-biased corporation to have it that skewed. These are the problems that go on in society. And as a result, we have a media that ill-informs the populace, and that results in a lot of people who, as you just said, end up believing a load of old nonsense.
Yeah. Two things I want to finish up on. Sorry, this question, I need to get this question out there. This is from Geesey German. Did you ever hear what Frauvi de Leyen wants to install a secret service, and what she wants is the handover, FEX and free speech from Gisela. That's from Gisela.
Yeah. So what she's talking about is the EU Democracy Shield. Has anyone, if you heard of this, right? It's horrendous idea. I mean, look, the point is, just like any corrupt organization, they call it the EU Democracy Shield. And what it actually does is snooping on what people are doing online, right? That's what its point is. So it's there it says it's there to enforce freedom of speech by erasing hate speech. Well, who decides what hate speech is? It's just whatever the government decides it is. And in this case, it's whatever the EU decides it is. And the EU is obviously, again, not a democracy, right? It's pretend democracy. You vote for people who literally cannot choose any of the agenda. Unlike MPs in Parliament who can propose legislation, all the rest of it, their people can't. The people who do are the Commission, right? It's all sewn up. Von der Leyen, did anybody cast a vote for her? No. She was appointed by the Commission. So again, you sit there and realize that what the EU are doing are the same things that many corrupt regimes around the world do, and I would count them as one of them. And what they do is they say one thing and actually do another. It's horrific beyond belief. And I will never regret voting Brexit.
Lastly, could there be potential civil unrest following the breakdown of the social contract between the government and the people? Both of you.
I think there's always the potential for civil unrest. It's not a new idea. It's not something that hasn't happened before in the UK. I remember the Brixton riots. I remember the Toxteth riots. I remember more recently the riots that happened in Streatham down into Croydon as well. People, if they're pushed hard enough, will turn. They'll get to a point where they feel nothing they're saying is being heard. And it's generally these people, the most disaffected people in society, that will resort to this because they feel they don't have any other alternative. There is alternatives, but that's how they feel. That's how it's perceived. And sometimes, although it's, in my opinion, it's the wrong course of action to take, sometimes people feel it's the only course of action to take. I almost feel it's not a case of if there will be some civil unrest in the near future. I'm thinking it's going to be a case of when that civil unrest is going to occur.
Ronnie M's put, what are the alternatives?
Right. Well, being in local politics, I would hope that the most obvious answer to that would be to vote in change. Look to your hearts. Look to what you want to see. Look to what party is offering the ideas and solutions that you most align with, and put your vote behind them for political change to affect change in society. That's the only lasting change that's going to happen. If you have a revolution out on the streets, it's not necessarily going to affect the results of what's decided in government, and it would very rarely bring down the government. It might relieve your frustrations for a short period of time, but it won't affect real change. Real change is done quietly and slowly and determinedly. It's not done violently.
Basil, what's your thoughts on that, mate?
On civil unrest, I would say the sad answer is I don't know. And the reason I'm saying that's sad is because as much as I love this country and I love its people and all the rest of it, and I'm very, very proud of our history and so on, and our ability to stand up and fight for ourselves, I can't lie and say that I was incredibly dismayed by some of the reactions, or the lack of reaction, shall I say, by some of the public when it comes to issues that we faced. And just to give the biggest example that always sticks with me was we've suffered from Islamist terrorism in this country for decades now. An imported ideology. This is not like the IRA on our doorstep. This is an imported ideology that we didn't have to have here. It's a choice to have it here, and we've gone ahead with it. And when they massacred, Salman Abedi massacred those little girls in the Manchester Arena bombing, I genuinely thought this country was going to go into full-on meltdown. And instead, they had a little vigil and they sang "Don't Look Back in Anger," and people just carried on as if nothing had happened. We've had multiple terrorist attacks since then, and we carried on as if nothing had happened. And that scares me because I don't know whether people are not up for the fight. I don't know if people are just too scared of what the authorities will do. I don't know if it's that they don't care, which is genuinely worrying, and they just see it as someone else's problem. I don't know if they just believe what the media tell them, which, again, they completely focus on the idea of just carry on, nothing to see here. So the honest answer is I don't know. And I don't know if there ever will be civil unrest because, unlike some countries like France and so on, where at the slightest bit of government tyranny, they go mental, in this country, we just seem to get on with it. And that genuinely worries me at times.
Do you think we need... This might sound bad, yeah, but in a way, do you think that something like civil unrest needs to happen for radical change to take place?
No, I think it doesn't need to happen for it to take place. No, civil unrest is not necessary for the massive changes that we can have because we do live in a democracy, and it's a real democracy, and you can vote, and you can look at the polls right now.
But the current Labour government aren't respecting democracy, are they?
Well,
at all?
No, they're not. But they would argue. You what? Sorry.
They have an expiry date, though, and we can vote them out.
Yeah, exactly. And they would look at and say, well, we are because we've introduced, like, for instance, they've introduced this one in, one out scheme, which is a lot of rubbish. But they would turn and say that is us respecting what the people want. Or for instance, this new thing where they're going to start deporting up to 50,000 or something. It was because they're going to give illegals not the right to remain here indefinitely. Well, again, that's only if the ECHR says that their country is safe again, which is never going to happen. So these things that they do, they'll sit there and think, well, is this not placating people? Can we not? Because they like I said, they genuinely think differently to us. So they don't realise that this problem's not going anywhere. It's only going to get worse. They just sit there and think, well, we've dealt with that now. Can we now get back on with the things we enjoy getting on with, like, giving out more benefits or nationalising things or whatever? The point is that these problems are not going away. Will there be civil? Look, again, I just don't know. But do I think it's necessary to make change? No, it isn't. Like I say, look at Reform in the polls; they're smashing it. So that goes to show that people are ready for change. And by the way, that can also dampen things down, because sometimes people are like, listen, I ain't going to go and destroy my town centre when I know I've got an election down the corridor and I'll vote for reform, and that will change things too. But that brings me back to the point I made yesterday. Reform, they need to make sure that they've got their ducks in order. Do you know what I mean? Because if they don't, they'll be seen as part of the problem as well. And then you might get civil unrest. You genuinely might, because people will be like, I am sick of it. Literally nothing is working. So yeah, wait and see.
Current Labour government is too far from what's needed to be done. Reform is more aligned, but not enough support. The time needed to get that support is too long, and the time for effects of actions done by a reform government would take decades.
Unless if you want to.
Service.
Yeah, it won't if you want. Honestly, the problems in our country can be fixed within a couple of years if you've got the willpower. It's just you need the willpower.
Will. Absolutely, yeah. Basil. It's all about political will.
You need the willpower.
If you're prepared to roll your sleeves up and do what is uncomfortable and what is ugly to get the country turned around, then you will succeed.
The biggest one is if Nigel Farage is up for it, because if the Prime Minister, if he wins and he's the Prime Minister, which I'm not saying he is, by the way, I genuinely think there's going to be a lot of roller coasters before we get there and things that will happen. But if Nigel Farage was to win and Reform was the government, he has the power to override every law that is in place around job security and protectionism and all the rest of it when it comes to civil service. He can literally sack anybody. It's been proven, because Dominic Cummings got Boris Johnson to do it, and that's how they got academies done by the civil service, who refused to do them. Right, one of the few good things the Conservative government did was these academies, and they managed to do them because Boris Johnson kept sacking people until they agreed to do it. And that's literally all you've got to do before you reform anything or anything like that. Just turn around and go, I will sack every single civil servant until one of you agrees to do what I'm telling you to. And that's how you get things done.
100%.
Couldn't agree with you more, Bo.
Sophie's made a.
I've got to go, by the way. I do apologise. It's quite late, so I'm going to have to go, okay? But thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. All right, we'll wrap it up there then.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me, Basil and my dad, tonight for the second stream. Yeah, honestly, it's been a pleasure having you on again, Basil, mate, as always. And yeah, if you guys like tuning in for these conversations, then please don't hesitate to follow the Uncensored Patriots official YouTube channel. It's in the current scroller at the bottom there. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you don't follow me on X, it's ShawneeBoy89. And yeah, have a lovely evening.
Thanks again to everyone that tuned in, viewed. Thank you so much for everyone that raised questions. You make the evening 100% possible. For any of you that didn't get your questions answered, sorry about that. We couldn't get to everyone, but we'll try to get to as many people as we can during the course of the evening.
Also, day 6 of no swearing as well. Bosh. See you later.
Good night, everyone.